Everyone's got a first love. The question is, what is it? Is it Christ or is it something else? And oftentimes religion is a really sneaky counterfeit for Christ. Because we think, well, I'm a Christian, therefore Christ is my first love. That's what the Pharisees thought in Matthew 7. And that's what the other 5 virgins, I'm sure, thought as well. Oh, but wait a minute. So when we allow our first, and by the way, that's first love, right? Revelation 2, 4 through 5. So here's the problem. And this is, I think, a great counterfeit that we as Christians have. I believe that many Christians have as their first love the Great Commission, not the Great Commandment, and that our loves are misprioritized. And I come from someone that was going to be a missionary and was very active in church, and I just know, I've been around a lot of cultures. The goal and the metric of most churches I see is growth, right? And again, like the Great Commission is pursued and the Great Commandment is assumed. Great Commandment, of course, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Great Commission being, go make disciples of all the nations. So in Matthew 7, the Pharisees heard from Jesus after they did all of these things for him. Like, did we not prophesy your name, cast out demons in your name? And he says, depart from me, I never knew you, you who practice lawlessness. And I referenced this earlier in, like, what is lawlessness? Like, is that not doing all the right things? They just said they did all the right things, right? Like, what do you mean lawlessness? They seemed like they were doing amazing things. Jeremiah 31:33 says that under the new covenant, God's law is going to be written on our hearts. And then Jesus defined the fulfillment of the law, or actually rather, Jesus defined like what is the most important commandment, Mark 12, to love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Paul later goes on to say in Romans 3 that love is the fulfillment of the law, because love does no harm to a neighbor. And so what's interesting is that I think there's a way that I can hopefully help you. Like, how do I know if Jesus Christ is my first love or if the Great Commandment, right? Just doing things is my first love. I believe that when we have as our first love works, performance, it's going to show in how you're measuring success and what it is that's driving the motivation. It becomes completely performance. Of now, how close you are to God has to do with, well, did I preach the gospel to somebody today? Am I involved in a Bible study? How big is my church? How big is my ministry? It's all about the platform, and it's about you. And you feel validated the more accomplishments you have, which is why I believe these Pharisees showed up and said, did I not? 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 I burned myself. You're also going to have burnout. I burned myself out for you. Contrary to this, when you have love the love of Christ as your first priority, guess what all of a sudden gets challenged? All the numbers. Because it has nothing to do with how much you're doing. It has everything to do with what is Christ doing. And I believe there's going to be seasons where you might have lots of outward activity, and he's calling you to that. And there's might be seasons where you have what's called the dark night of the soul, and he actually pulls you out of all outward ministry and validations. Why? So that he can cultivate his relationship with you, and that you rise and fall with him. This is the same thing like the Israelites in the desert. When the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke, cloud of smoke, whatever it is, pillar of fire, cloud of smoke, moved. When it camped, they camped, and when it moved, they moved. They stood and moved along with what God was doing. And sometimes they'd cower when he asked them to do things. And so this changes everything. This takes the pressure off of you to think of, is readiness somehow some external validation? No. And that's something that Matt and I have been talking about. Like, gosh, it doesn't, like, God, could there be more things that we could be functionally doing right now? And we both have kind of confirmed with each other, and this is just us, but it's just like, there does seem to be like a pot, like a weight. There's things you're doing and there's things you've done, but it's like, there's a weight. Something's coming, and he's probably going to ask us to do something when that something comes. But for him and I, we've been talking like, man, there's this weird, almost uncomfortable weight. And my wife and I are like, antsy. Like, I want to do something. And I mentioned before we started recording, when God has told us he's got a promise for us, and then we try to fulfill that promise in our own strength, we get Esau every time. Every single time. Or Ishmael, I'm sorry. Matt, I'm mixing up all my things here. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. God promised Abraham Isaac, I'm going to give you a son. And then he grew weary, and he had a little bird in his ear saying, why don't you just do this yourself? And he did it himself, and that's why we have war in the Middle East. is because of man's attempts to complete and fulfill God's law. You guys, when we rest and wait on the Lord, the results are his problem. The results and the timeline's his problem. And if you know that you're abiding in him, you daily lay down your desire to pick up and create something in your own hands that's going to actually go against the very will of God. I hope all of that makes sense, and hopefully that's a helpful way. And hopefully this is liberating and freeing to get out of guilt and shame and condemnation that you're not doing enough. Maybe you're not, but maybe you're just doing the wrong things. Get near to the Lord and allow him to tell you what he wants you to do. And then you listen and obey that voice, and you grow in discerning that voice, and you unite yourself to the body, right? That was part of it. Be joined to the body. You unite yourself to the body that can help mature you, and that you can help mature by being fitly joined with other people, I would say, on this same pursuit. Other people gathering their own oil who are also going to be looking for the body. You find them wherever they can be found, even if it's not in your Sunday gathering. No offense, Sunday gatherer church leaders. And church leaders, I would tell you, you make sure that the body's actually being built up in love and not just perpetuating some man-made system.